I wanted to just tell you, I know last week we asked if anyone had been on a holiday, and if you've ever been on a holiday, ever in your life, can you just raise your hand for me? Just see? Yeah, if you've ever been on holiday, it looks like most people have been on holiday at some point in their lives. And I want to sort of take you back to one of my most, great moments greatest moments in my life. And it had to do with the holiday, and it was Beth's 21st birthday. And I was going to surprise her by taking her on a trip to Venice. Some of you might have heard this story before. I was going to surprise her and take her on a trip to Venice. And we used to live up just near Lancaster, which is in the northwest of the country. And we were living there, and I spoke to the travel agents, and this was all done over the phone. And I asked, well, how do I get to Venice? And she said to me, all you need to do is get the direct train from Liverpool Street Station. And I thought, okay. And I looked on a map, and I remembered that we're going to be in Liverpool that Thursday. So I thought, I know what, I'm going to book a flight for Friday morning. All we need to do, we're going to be in Liverpool already. All we need to do is just get this train from Liverpool Street Station straight to Stansted Airport. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. It was going to work out so well. She has no clue. Big surprise. I planned everything really well, so I thought. And then I rung a friend up who we were doing some work with youth at the time in Liverpool, and I rang the guy and I said, oh, can we stay at your house on Thursday night? And he said, yeah, sure, no problem. What for? And I said, we're going to Venice tomorrow morning, and we're gonna, it's a big surprise. Beth has no idea about it. And he goes, oh, are you flying from Liverpool Airport? And I said, no, Stansted. And the phone went a bit quiet, and he's like, why are you flying from Stansted? I was like, well, they told me all I need to do is get a train from Liverpool Street Station. Silence again. And he's like, Liverpool Street Station's in London, don't you? And I was like, obviously, of course I know that. And anyway, I then had to ruin the surprise by telling someone that we actually are going to Venice the next day, and we're going to have to leave our friend's house at 3 a.m. to drive all the way through the night to go down and around the M25 and then back up. We're closer to Stansted now, aren't we? To get to this airport on time and to pay to park the car for like 3 or 4 days. And it's like you had to just make these major adjustments. And anyway, it was quite a mistake, but the holiday was nice. And I'm very glad that my friend was better at geography than me. So if you've never been anywhere with me, I just need to let you know now I'm not exactly the most geographically capable. So a sat-nav is my friend, so. But if we're walking somewhere, you probably need to hold my hand, just saying. We probably all have had stories of like mess-ups or mistakes. There's another time when Beth was in France with some family friends, and this friend of theirs, he went into the bakery. There's probably a posh French word for that, but I forgot what it is. That's whatever it is. He goes in to get some baguettes, right? And he wanted 3 or 4 baguettes. And he orders, and the person behind the counter sort of repeats the question back to him. It just double checks, and he says, yeah, and this is what I wanted. He says, okay. And the guy, instead of getting 4 baguettes, he walked out with 40 baguettes. And only in France can you just walk up and ask for anybody to give you 40 baguettes. And they're like, oh yeah, of course, we have 40 baguettes. Here you go, no problem. So he felt too embarrassed to even let people know that he was just too embarrassed in the shop. And anyway, they got home, and they spent the rest of the week having sword fights and baton games and all sorts with 3 dozen dried out baguettes, because you can only eat so many baguettes. We're doing a summer series at the moment called Making the Most. It's the summer season. How do we make the most of a season? How do we make the most of what's going on? And we've been looking at a couple different things. The first week we looked at seizing the day, how to make each day count. And then the last week what did we talk about last week? Beeline, thank you. That was just a test. No, just kidding. We talked about making a beeline. How do you set priorities in life? How do you make each day count? How do you set priorities? And today we're going to be looking at something called How to Make Amends, and how to make it better, if you like. And I want to give us some really practical steps. And if you're not yet a follower of Jesus, you are in the absolute perfect place, because we are here for you. We want to help everybody learn what Jesus is like, and learn how he can help our lives, and what he's done for us, and how he changes our lives. You're in the absolute most perfect place to be, and welcome. We're just so glad to be together. But I want to give some really practical steps, some really helpful steps. And I'm also really just super chuffed and pleased that we've got so many of our young people with us. They're staying in with us over the summer months. And I'm really glad, because there's going to be some things we talk about today which were really helpful lessons. And I just hope that maybe you could tuck it in your back pocket, register it in your brain, and remember it, because some mistakes that we've had as adults, this was going to help you in life. So I'm really, really glad that we've got so many amazing teenagers with us this morning. So cool. Like it or not, in spite of our best efforts, we all make mistakes, don't we? It can be something as naive as booking a flight from the wrong airport, or from the wrong place, or ordering too many baguettes. It can be something like that. But other times it can be something much more serious, something much more damaging. Other times it can be accidental, totally accidental, of course. And other times we can make mistakes that are entirely intentional. There's no accident about it. Someone did this on purpose. There's no question about whether it was naivety. This was deliberate, intentional unkindness or evil, and there's a whole range of things. And I'm sure we've all experienced different types of those mistakes. And here's the first lesson. This is so encouraging. You're going to be like, I'm so glad that we are here. New Life Church is so wonderful. Here's how they make me feel. Here's the first step. We all screw up. Isn't that encouraging? We all screw up. We all cross a line that we didn't mean to, don't we? We all say something that we wish we could have pulled back as soon as we say it. We've all done something we wish we didn't do. We all treat people in ways that weren't the best that we could have treated people. We all do that. And sometimes we do it on purpose. Sometimes we did mean to call them that name, and sometimes we did mean to say that thing, hurt them in that way, because they annoyed us and they frustrated us, And I am going to drive a bit faster so they can't pull in the lane behind me, because he's just annoying me. That stupid little... we just all do these kind of things. And I don't know if you've read much of the Bible. Okay, and the Bible, if you're just learning what the Bible is more like a library. It's all collected. It's one book, but really it's 66 different books. And it's been written over thousands of years, and it was written by loads of different authors in loads of different languages. And it got put together about 300 years. What we call the Bible now was put together about 300 years even after Jesus was alive. And Jesus' first followers didn't have what we call the Bible. They weren't sitting around reading the books about themselves. Basically, those things that they wrote were their own first-hand accounts. They were later put into what we call the Bible. And if you're not yet sure what the Bible's about or what the Bible's like, some people sort of think the Bible's just full of rules, and the Bible's just telling you what you should and shouldn't do. Or they think the Bible is just full of heroes and people who did amazing, amazing things. But I want to encourage you to look at it again, or to look at it anew, because the Bible is this incredible collection, this incredible library of all these different books. And it's an incredibly honest book. And it says this. It says, we have all sinned and fallen short of God's glory, or God's ideal. We all have fallen short. And see, the Bible's less about perfect people and more about a perfect God. And I just want to read you something. This is something that we use in our Superstars with our youngest age group, the Jesus Storybook Bible. And I want to just read how it's described in this little book. So, little bedtime story, gather in, tuck in. Some people think the Bible is a book full of rules, telling you what you should and shouldn't do. The Bible certainly does have some rules in it, because they show you how life works best. But the Bible isn't mainly about you and what you should be doing. The Bible is about God and what He has done. Other people think the Bible is a book of heroes, showing you the people that you should copy and you should be like. And the Bible does have some heroes in it. But, as you'll soon find out, most of the people in the Bible aren't actually heroes at all. They make some big mistakes, sometimes on purpose. They get afraid, they run away, and sometimes they are downright mean. You see, the Bible isn't a book of rules or a book of heroes. Most of all, it's a story. It's an adventure story about a young hero who came from a far country to win back his lost treasure. It's a love story about a brave prince who leaves his palace, his throne, everything to rescue the one he loves. It's like the most wonderful of fairy tales that has come true in real life. I don't know what your background or your expectation of what the Bible is. Maybe you've never even heard of it described that way. And even this month with our superstars, we're looking at this theme called epic. The epic, the greatest love story ever told. And that's what we're doing this month as we work with online. You can catch it online, sorry. That's what we're putting out online every Sunday morning, the story. God's amazing, the greatest love story ever. And that's going out online at the moment. So hey, cool, little nudge there. Now there's another passage, another verse that goes, it's in the book of James, and James says this. James writes, we all make many mistakes. We don't have time to go into it, but the crazy thing is James was like the brother of Jesus. And there's no record of James even being a follower of Jesus when Jesus was alive. But for some reason, something happened for James to become a follower of Jesus after. But James was Jesus' like half-brother. And if you've got any siblings, what in the world would make you believe that your sibling is actually the Messiah, the Savior, the Son of God? Okay? I can't tell you what any of my brothers have ever done to ever be anything close to being like the Messiah. And if you're asking questions about faith, it'd be quite an interesting thing for you to look into. Why in the world would you believe that your brother is really your Savior and your Lord? That's something worth looking into and worth exploring, isn't it? But anyway, the first step, we all screw up. But I want to make it super duper, super clear. Just because we all screw up does not mean you're a screw up. Just because you make mistakes does not mean you are a mistake. Just because you have done something accidentally does not mean you are an accident. Just because something has happened which is messy does not mean you are a mess. Just because we have screwed up does not mean that you are a screw up. It doesn't say that. This is not what it's about. And the first step to making amends is accepting that we all actually screw up. And most of you already knew this. But if you didn't know this, just ask the person beside you and they will nod and let you know that actually you do. you do screw up. So the next thing you think, okay, after we've done a screw up, what is our next step on making amends? The next step we need to do is we have to own up. So once we've screwed up, we've got to own up, okay? And we should own up, okay? You should do it. Because when you own up, you admit to having done something wrong. And I say you should because we don't always do it. Okay, we all screw up. We should own up. And this is not easy to do. Well, I mean, if you find it easy, let us know the trick, because I haven't found it yet, personally. You know what I mean? It could be for a friend, a neighbor, a colleague, another person in school with you, another person at university. It could be someone that you're in a relationship with. It could be, you know, like having to do this is actually difficult and awkward and uncomfortable, really. It's totally not easy to do. And it always involves somebody else, because when we do screw-ups that hurt somebody, it's always to do with relationship. It's always, that's the issue, it's relationship. And so because it's relationship, the hard thing about relationship is having to own up to somebody else in that relationship that we got it wrong, that we're less than perfect, that we're not amazing all the time, that we might have even done something to hurt them on purpose. You know, when we own up, that's what it means. And it's awkward because it's a relational aspect. You know, if you are like in the garden and you're like, you know, using your 6 months ago when we had grass that grew and you're using your like trimmer and you're like cutting the edge of the lawn and you accidentally cut down an allium or some flowers or something, You don't sit down and you don't lean over and say, I'm really sorry. I just want you to know I'm so sorry that I damaged this flower. And, it's okay. You will grow back. It will. Next season you'll be back. You're a bulb that you're going to come back. Okay. The reason those things we don't even think about, we don't ever do that kind of thing, is because it's not a relationship. And when we hurt people and how to make amends, it really is because there's a relationship. And when the Bible talks about sin, there's this word called sin, which we don't say in church because that's like the S word, so sin. But sin just basically means this poison that ruins relationships. The poison that hurts you and me. Because when someone does something that hurts you and me and it hurts somebody else, that's this sin, that's this poison called sin. If we do something that damages relationships, it's all about relationship. Remember, it's a great story about this one person, this prince who does whatever he can to find his lost treasure. So it's difficult when we have to make amends and own up to people that we hurt. And the other thing is, we have to take responsibility. When you own up, you have to take responsibility for your own actions. You have to take responsibility for the consequences of what you've done. And when you own up, you actually have to stop making excuses too. Because it's so easy. Well, I find it easy. It's easy to make excuses, isn't it? It's easy to wiggle and find a way. We've seen it all the time played out in our courts. It's easy to find some sort of excuse. But when you own up, you have to actually stop making excuses, and you actually have to start taking responsibility. And if you learn how to do this, you will grow in life. And you might not yet even be a follower of Jesus. But if you put this into practice, it will actually improve your relationships. It will help you grow as a person because you will learn maturity. You will begin to grow. You'll stop making excuses about some stuff. You'll actually become a better person. You will. It's totally helpful. And there's this verse, and it's in Proverbs, which is one of the books in the Bible. It's called the wisdom book. It's full of lots of sayings and things like that. And in Proverbs it says this: if you hide your sin, it doesn't go well for you. But if you own up and if you turn from them or move away, you'll be able to receive mercy. Because as long as you're making excuses or pretending you've never done anything, then you don't need any mercy. But as soon as you say, hey, I blew it, you can receive mercy. Mercy's there for you, but you just haven't been able to receive it because you've been denying that you even need it. Well, that's what it's saying. Don't hide it. And after recognizing that we all screw up and that we should own up, there's the next step that we can learn, that we should learn, and it's called we could make up. So, we could make up. Again, this one is optional, but it's when you reach out to somebody else and you try to make up, you try to make it right. And this is when you ask their forgiveness, and you've got no control over their response. No control. It's totally out of your hands. When you have to try to make up, it's totally out of you have no idea what the other person's going to say. They might be ready to forgive you, and they might not be. And they might never be ready to forgive you. You have no control over what the other person does. You can't do anything about it. It's totally resting on them. You're totally just submitting to them, asking them to forgive you. My holiday screw up was pretty minor, and I had to own up. I had to say, look, I booked a holiday. Oh, cool. When? Tomorrow. Oh. She doesn't like surprises anyway, so I thought it would be funnier to do it this way. So if you're getting married and if you're early years of relationships, these are things you should also avoid. Anyway, that's another story for another time. And I had to own up, didn't I? And we had to figure out how to make it work, how to make amends. And it did work. And she was able to forgive me, and it's a silly story, but it actually does remind you that, we all make screw-ups, and we have to own up to what we've done. And then we have to find a way forward. We have to find a way to move forward and to make it work. But sometimes our screw-ups are a lot bigger than just a holiday gone wrong or ordering 40 baguettes by mistake, aren't they? And some of us have been seriously hurt by others. And some of us have seriously hurt others too. And that's the reality of life, because we all screw up. We all screw up. And there's this verse in Colossians, and the book in Colossians is written to these people that lived in Colossus by this guy named Paul. And he says this to them. He's writing to them. These are early followers. This is the early church. This is some instructions for like early followers of Jesus. And he says, hey, don't be angry with one another, but forgive each other. And if someone has done wrong to you, forgive them. And he bases this all on one thing. Why should you forgive them? Because you've been forgiven by God. Forgive not because you'd like to, or because you want to, or because it feels good, or whatever. He doesn't even go anything down that road. He actually challenges them to forgive in a way that's totally different, because this is a totally different, new, radical community that's nothing like the rest of the world and the rest of society. Come on, guys. It's not helpful. Stop being angry with one another. Forgive one another. And if someone has hurt you, if they've done wrong to you, forgive them. He doesn't say it's easy. There's nothing in there that says this is easy. So although I'm talking in a quick and easy way, don't for a moment think that this is easy. And if you've ever had to experience this, you know it's not easy. It's not easy. Because the deeper the hurt, the harder it is. Okay, that's the truth. But he says forgive, not because you want to, not because it feels good. Forgive because you've been forgiven by God. Forgive because you've been forgiven by God. And the thing is, we can read this passage and we can sort of forget the context of what was going on culturally and socially, especially at the time. We sort of could gloss over what was going on. But there's a book that's written in 150 AD by a guy named Justin Martyr. And it's about 80 years after Paul wrote this letter. And listen to what Justin Martyr says about the early church that he is living and he is experiencing. He writes this. He says, we who formerly hated and murdered one another, now we live together and we share the same table. Share the same table. When you eat with one another is a big deal. It's a big deal in that culture. We share the same table. Now we pray for our enemies and we try to win those that hate us. You see, this is the context Paul is writing to these people so diametrically opposed from one another. These people who are Jews and Gentiles on either side, these people who lived and have been oppressed by other people, these people who are slaves and slave owners, these people who are all in different situations are now in this one situation together as new followers of Jesus, this new community, and they have to figure out, how in the world do we live? How do we make it work? What do we do? And that's the context that Paul writes, hey, just don't be angry with one another. Learn to forgive one another. Release each other not because you like it, not because they don't get on your nerves anymore, not because they're your best friends, but because Jesus has done this to you. Jesus has forgiven you. That's the context that Paul is writing, which is really, really challenging. And I have to tell you this as well. If you're thinking about following Jesus isn't always easy, and it's not a crutch for the weak. It's actually something that's really challenging to do. Following Jesus is crazy because it means you have to start thinking about people differently, which isn't always nice to do. It's tough. But when we become followers of Jesus, we begin to learn what Jesus is like. We submit our lives to Jesus, and then we begin to love other people the way Jesus did. We can't separate the relationship aspect, because the whole story is all about this prince who came and gave everything to restore the relationship for his lost treasure. And it's tough. As soon as you decide to be a follower of Jesus, it is amazing. It liberates your life. It gives you freedom in new ways, but it also is really tough because you have to treat people the way Jesus did. And that's not always easy. It's tough. But let's be honest about it, right? It will radically change your life. Following Jesus will radically change your life. We all screw up. We should own up, and we could make up. 3 little steps. 3 steps to make amends and repair relationships. We all screw up. We should own up, and we could make up. I want to give you 10 words. Maybe you need to write these down. Maybe your partner's going to write them down for you. I'm going to give you 10 words that will absolutely transform your life, okay? I don't really make radical claims like that very often. Here are the 10 words. I'm sorry. I was wrong. Will you please forgive me? 10 words. I'm sorry. I was wrong. Will you please forgive me? I'm sorry. I was wrong. Will you please forgive me? We all screw up. We own up, and we could make up. We all screw up. We should own up, and we could make up. I'm sorry. I was wrong. Will you please forgive me? Just try it next time you're in an argument. See what happens. Just try it. There's that person you know something not quite right with. Why don't you just try it? Just say it to them. See what happens. Because then you put the responsibility to the other person. Yeah? I'm sorry. I was wrong. Will you please forgive me? And I know it's not always easy to forgive someone. And just because you forgive someone, it doesn't mean that they're all of a sudden, free from all consequences either. Sometimes we don't always understand that. And I don't know if you remember this story. I know some of you are aware of it. But in September 2018 in the U.S., and this was in Texas, there was a police officer who came home on the end of a long shift. And as she went to her block of flats, she got confused and she went to the wrong floor. You might remember this in the news. And she went to the wrong floor, and each floor is identical. And so not only had she gone to the wrong floor, she then went to the wrong room. And she, was going to get in, the door was ajar, so she opens the flat and goes into the apartment. And there's a young black man sitting there watching TV and eating ice cream, and she thought that he was an intruder. And she pulled out her handgun and she shot him a couple times in the chest. And then he gets, taken to hospital, and he dies from his injuries. And a criminal case was brought against her. You might have seen this in the news. I'm not sure if you did. But at a time in the U.S. when race relations haven't been any worse, hardly. It's just disgusting at times what goes on out there, isn't it? And here we have a case of an off-duty white police officer shooting a young, unarmed black man sitting down after the end of his day, watching some TV, feet up, and enjoying some Haagen-Dazs or something. And long story cut short, she was brought into court and brought into trial. And she was eventually charged and then went to trial and was found guilty of murder. And the young man's brother, who was only 18 at the time, he made a statement to the court. You might have seen how people can do this. And he makes a statement to the court. And in the statement, something unexpected took place. And you can watch it for yourselves.
I can speak for myself. I forgive you. And I know if you go to God and ask Him, He will forgive you. And I don't think anyone could say it. Again, I'm speaking for myself, not even bad for my family. But I love you just like anyone else. And I'm not gonna say I hope you rot and die just like my brother did, but I personally want the best for you. And I wasn't gonna ever say this in front of my family or anyone, but I don't even want you to go to jail. I want the best for you. Because I know that's exactly what both of them would want you to do. And the best would be give your life to Christ. I'm not gonna say anything else. I think giving your life to Christ would be the best thing that both of them would want you to do. Again, I love you as a person. And I don't wish anything bad on you. I don't know if this is possible, but can I give her a hug, please? Please?
Sometimes being a follower of Jesus is difficult. It's not always easy. It's tough. And Officer Guigan, she still went to jail. She's currently in prison. She was sentenced for 10 years. And just because he forgave her didn't mean that it changed what happened. It didn't mean that what was so unjust and wrong in that situation was somehow, magically candy-coated and tied up with a bow, and let's put a nice little rainbow on it and say it all was fine and nobody was hurt and nobody was upset. No, it doesn't mean any of that kind of stuff. And the crazy thing is, and this is what we want you to think about, there was somebody who did whatever he could to make amends with you, even though you never asked for it, because she never asked for it. She never apologized. She never asked for it. She never said, I own up, a screw up, she got in more trouble because of the way she tried to cover the crime in reality. And yet this young black man is the most like Jesus. I mean, what an embodiment of Jesus, yeah. You're looking at a little Jesus right there. Doing something that was never asked for. She never asked for forgiveness. She didn't own up. She didn't apologize. And yet he is extending something. He's giving a gift that was totally unexpected. And this is what Paul's talking about for the early church. You don't forgive because you want to. You don't forgive because it feels good. You don't forgive because it just means everything goes away and all that junk and all that crap that happened is somehow magically disappears. It doesn't mean any of that stuff. It means we just forgive because of the one who forgave us. That's the appeal. That's the motivation. That's what drives us. And you can't do it in your own strength. You cannot do it because it's hurtful and it's hard and it's broken your heart. And things that happen damage relationships. That's what sin does. Sin is the poison that damages relationships. And we can't do it. And it's so hard to do it, but you can't do it. So therefore, don't expect yourself to be able to do it unless you can rely on the forgiveness that you received from Jesus. We don't have to do it in our own strength. We do it because we've been forgiven. The forgiveness that I've received, I can extend to others. Well, that's what Paul was saying when he's writing to those people who used to be enemies, who are now sitting at the same table with one another. He doesn't say forgive because they're now your best friends. He says forgive because Jesus forgave you. It's amazing. That young man, Brant, 18-year-old young man, offering forgiveness to someone who didn't ask for it and didn't deserve it. She didn't deserve it either, did she? And so, as we wrap up and close this morning, I want to just challenge you and ask you, can you make the most of this moment? Maybe you're here and you're thinking there's someone in my life, there's somebody in my life that I need to go say, I'm sorry, I was wrong, will you please forgive me? Or maybe today you're in that moment where you're more like this officer who all of a sudden has been offered a gift that she never expected, offered a gift that he never expected. All of a sudden you're here today and you're being offered something that you had no idea was coming your way. There's this extension for somebody to repair a relationship. You didn't ask for it and you certainly don't deserve it, but all of a sudden there's somebody offering you forgiveness. Can you make the most of this moment? We have a summer season. What are you going to do in this summer season? We're just going to roll or let it go past and just move on to the next thing? Or will you make the most of a moment? Will you make the most of a moment? And today we're looking at making amends that can repair relationships. And maybe you're here this morning and you're still a follower of Jesus. Or maybe you're here this morning and you're not yet a follower of Jesus. I want to ask you to consider following. Follow the one who James, his own brother, decided to follow. Would you at least consider this radical community that's so different to the world that you've been living in and experiencing? So different. And would you surrender yourself and give the opportunity to let Jesus be the one who directs and leads your life? That's what it means to become a follower of Jesus. It's saying, I need you to guide me. I need you to help me. I've booked a flight to one airport, and I'm not quite sure how to get there. I need somebody else's help in this situation. Following Jesus is saying, I can't do it on my own. I can't figure it out anymore. I can't make it happen on my own. I'm tired of trying on my own. And when we follow Jesus, we let him lead us and we let him change us, because we begin to look more and behave more like the one that we follow. And if you're there this morning and you'd like to make a decision, today could be your day that you make a decision and say, you know what? I'm in. I'm all in. Today I'm going to make that decision. I'm going to follow Jesus. I've been discovering and learning and exploring, but today I know I'm going to just step in. I'm going to cross that line and say, you know what? Today is the day I want to say, have your way. Jesus, have your way in my life. If that is you, I would absolutely just love to pray with you. We can come over to the side in just a moment. We can chat. We can pray together. I would absolutely love to pray with you. It would be something that would just be a joy for us to pray together as you take that next step to say, today's the day. I'm making a decision. I am going to be a follower of Jesus. I'd love to do it with you. And if you're here this morning and you know you need to make a relationship right, please make the most of this season and do whatever you can to make it right. I'm sorry, I was wrong. Will you please forgive me? Let's pray. Jesus, thank you so much that you came to show us what God's really like. You weren't angry and trying to find ways to destroy us and wipe us out, but you were actually finding ways to win our hearts back. Thank you that we all can discover more about you. We all are learning more about you. And thank you that when we begin to follow you, we all take it one step at a time. Jesus, I just pray for everyone here today that they would go away knowing how much you love them, the type of forgiveness that you offer, what you do to try and make amends and restore relationships. Thank you. And I ask you would help us, that you would strengthen us, that we could be more like you, that when we hurt others, that we could own up to it. God, that you would help us make up. God, we need your strength in that. And for everyone who's experienced hurt from different situations, I just ask that you would heal their hearts. God, heal their minds. Whatever wounds might still be there, I just ask that in your gentle, loving presence, you would just begin to soothe them. That today could be a day where they're more healed than they were this morning. Thank you that you're the God that is always in the restoring and repairing business. In your name we pray. Amen. Have an amazing, wonderful week. If you'd like to chat, if you'd like to pray about anything, please come over to the side and see me. I would absolutely love to pray with you. If you want another drink, grab another drink, say hello to a friend, say some hello to somebody you don't yet know. And if you've got some amazing superstars across the street, please go and collect them. Thank you.